Evelyn Harper stood in the middle of Hangar 4 at Teterboro Airport, New Jersey, watching 80 of the best aviation experts in America give up on her $78 million Gulfstream G700. It was 6:12 on a gray Monday morning, the kind of cold June rain that made the asphalt outside shine like black glass and sent a thin mist rolling under the hangar doors every time a service truck passed. Inside, the world smelled of jet fuel, hot metal, black coffee, leather polish, and the faint chemical sharpness of hydraulic fluid. White industrial lights hung from the ceiling like interrogation lamps, reflecting off the polished concrete floor and the silver belly of the jet. The aircraft sat silent, enormous, and useless, surrounded by open tool carts, diagnostic screens, laptops, orange extension cords, folded inspection blankets, and men in expensive company jackets who had stopped pretending they knew what to do. Evelyn wore a charcoal-tailored suit, a cream silk blouse, black heels, and a platinum watch that caught the light every time her hand tightened around her phone. Her face was perfect, controlled, and pale, but her eyes were empty with the kind of anger that came from fear she refused to name. In less than 2 hours, she was supposed to fly to Washington, D.C., to sign a $620 million defense aviation contract, a contract her board called historic, and the papers had already called a patriotic leap for American executive transport. But now, the jet would not clear engine validation. The left side readings kept spiking without cause, and the men she paid more in 1 month than some families earned in 5 years were lowering their heads. Finally, Dr. Warren Pike, chief of engineering, closed his laptop with both hands, swallowed hard, and said the sentence no one in that hangar wanted to hear. "Madam CEO, we're out of options." For 5 seconds, nobody moved. Rain tapped against the high windows. Somewhere behind the maintenance bay, a compressor coughed and died. Evelyn stared at Warren as though he had insulted the flag itself, then slowly turned her eyes across the semicircle of experts. FAA consultants, software technicians from Savannah, retired military aviation contractors, corporate safety auditors, engine specialists, flown in overnight from Dallas, men with white hair, pressed collars, six-figure watches, and laminated credentials hanging from their necks. They had argued for 14 hours, replaced sensors, rebooted avionics, inspected fuel pressure, recalibrated the diagnostic suite, and blamed everything except themselves. Now their silence felt heavier than failure. Evelyn's jaw flexed. 80 experts, she said, her voice low enough that everyone leaned in to hear it. And not one American in this room can tell me why my aircraft won't fly? The words landed like a slap. Near the service entrance, half hidden beside a yellow hydraulic tug, Caleb Turner froze with an old red metal toolbox in his right hand and his 9-year-old daughter Lily standing behind his leg. He had only come to move ground equipment before his shift ended, nothing more. His denim work jacket was damp at the shoulders. His brown work boots were stained with oil, and his hands were scarred from years of repairing machines that never came with easy answers. Lily clutched the strap of her faded pink backpack, her blonde hair tied in a crooked ponytail, her blue eyes wide as she looked from the billion-dollar company logo on the wall to the angry woman in heels standing beneath the wing. Caleb heard the engine tick, not loudly, not obviously, but with a rhythm that did not belong. Before this story goes any further, if you believe humble people can still carry the kind of strength money can't buy, subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Maybe your city is full of quiet heroes too. Then Caleb took one step forward and said, almost too softly, "Ma'am, I don't think your problem is in the software." Every head turned toward him. The change in the room was instant and cruel. A few technicians looked annoyed. One lawyer frowned as if a security breach had just walked in wearing muddy boots, and a senior engine consultant named Bradley Voss let out a short laugh through his nose. Caleb immediately wished he had stayed quiet. He could feel Lily's little fingers tightening around the back of his jacket, could feel the old shame crawling up his neck, the kind of shame a working man feels when rich people look at him like he has entered through the wrong door. Evelyn did not recognize him. To her, he was another outsourced badge, another hourly worker in the background of her empire. "And who are you?" she asked. Caleb lowered his toolbox to the floor carefully, as if loud movements might make the room hate him faster. "Caleb Turner, ma'am. Ground maintenance. Turner Field Services." Bradley stepped between them before Evelyn could answer. He had silver hair, a navy vest with an embroidered aerospace logo, and the irritated confidence of a man used to being believed. "With respect, Ms. Harper, this is exactly why hangar access should be restricted. We have certified engineers examining a complex integrated propulsion system, and the floor mechanic thinks he heard something." A few men smirked. Caleb's face did not change, but Lily saw his hand curl once and release. Bradley looked at Caleb's toolbox and added, louder this time, "This isn't a pickup truck in Tennessee, buddy. Maybe stick to moving the carts." The humiliation spread through the hangar like heat. Caleb looked down at his daughter and saw her eyes shining, not because she understood the technical insult, but because she understood the human one. She whispered, "Daddy, please don't. People like this always yell when we try to help." That was the moment Evelyn's expression shifted. Not much, just enough. A little crack in the polished stone. Caleb knelt beside Lily, setting one hand on her shoulder, his palm rough against the sleeve of her thrift store jacket. His voice was quiet, steady, and tired in a way that made the whole room listen despite itself. "Baby girl, a man doesn't have to be loud to know what's right." He stood again, keeping his eyes on Evelyn instead of the men laughing at him. "I'm not trying to embarrass anyone. I'm not asking for money. I've worked engines my whole life, ma'am. Farm planes, old military surplus generators, diesel, rigs, crop dusters, emergency equipment, whatever kept people moving. That left side has a false vibration pattern, not full mechanical failure. Not software either. Something's feeding bad information back into the system." Evelyn studied him, irritated by his confidence and unsettled by his restraint. He had no polish, no corporate language, no degree visible in a leather folder, but he spoke like a man who had listened to machines because machines had helped keep his family alive. Warren Pike shook his head. "Impossible. We checked the harness path twice." Caleb looked toward the open panel under the wing, then at the slight tremor in a thin metal line near the engine housing. "Not the main harness. A ground connection near the left compartment. If I'm wrong, I'll walk out and you'll never hear my voice again." Bradley scoffed. "This is absurd." Evelyn lifted one hand and the room went silent. Outside, a jet roared down a wet runway, disappearing into the low New Jersey clouds, while her own aircraft sat dead in front of her like a monument to arrogance. She looked at Lily, then at Caleb's battered toolbox, then at the 80 experts who had already surrendered. Her voice came out cold, sharp, and impossible to challenge. "Give him 5 minutes." Caleb swallowed, picked up his tools, and walked toward the engine while the entire hangar watched the poorest man in the room approach the most expensive failure in the company. Caleb Turner did not rush toward the Gulf Stream, even with 80 pairs of eyes burning into his back. He walked with the heavy discipline of a man who had learned that panic breaks more things than it repairs. The closer he got to the left engine compartment, the louder the small details became to him. The tick of cooling metal, the faint whine of a powered system waiting for permission, the smell of burned insulation hiding beneath fuel vapor, the tremble running through the thin panel seam like a pulse under skin. He set his old red toolbox on a folded black inspection mat and opened it carefully. Inside were not the spotless instruments of a corporate lab, but worn hand tools, each one marked by years of use. A ratchet with chipped chrome, needle-nose pliers wrapped in black tape, a flashlight with dents along the barrel, a voltage meter old enough to embarrass the engineers standing behind him. Warren Pike crossed his arms and watched like a professor forced to observe a student he expected to fail. Bradley Voss whispered something to another consultant, and the man laughed under his breath. Caleb heard it, but did not look back. He only glanced once at Lily, still standing near the yellow tug with her backpack pressed to her chest. She gave him a scared little nod, and that nod mattered more to him than every credential in the hangar. Caleb had been born 38 years earlier in Millington, Tennessee, not far from roads where American flags hung from porches. Church bells rang on Sundays, high. School football mattered too much, and men measured honesty by whether they showed up when work was ugly. His father, Samuel Turner, had served as a marine mechanic before coming home with a bad knee, a folded flag from a friend's funeral, and a belief that a man's name was only as good as the promises he kept. Samuel never had much money, but he kept tools clean, boots polished, and dinner at the table every night, even if dinner was canned beans, cornbread, and whatever meat was on sale at Piggly Wiggly. He taught Caleb to listen before touching anything mechanical. Machines talk before they break, he used to say, leaning over old engines in their backyard shed while cicadas screamed in the Tennessee heat. Most men don't listen because listening makes them feel small. Caleb grew up fixing tractors for neighbors, generators for veterans, pickups for families who paid him in cash, eggs, or handshakes. He did not learn from polished conference rooms. He learned from cold. Mornings, busted knuckles, unpaid invoices, and fathers who needed their trucks running so they could feed their kids. For Evelyn, watching Caleb move around her jet felt like watching a stranger touch the walls of a fortress she had spent her life building. North Star Aeronautics was not just a company to her. It was proof that she had survived a childhood where love was treated like a weakness, and achievement was the only acceptable language. Her father, Richard Harper, had been a defense investor with a voice like polished granite and a habit of correcting her posture before he ever asked how she felt. When she was 11, she brought home a second-place science fair ribbon, and he looked at it for 3 seconds before saying, "Second place is a polite word for losing." When her mother died from a sudden aneurysm during Evelyn's first year at Wharton, her father returned to a board meeting 48 hours after the funeral and expected Evelyn to do the same. She did. She became brilliant, disciplined, feared, and rich enough to purchase entire hangars, fleets, and silence. But in that hangar, with rain washing the windows and a single father kneeling beside an engine her experts could not understand, Evelyn felt a buried memory open inside her. Being a young woman in a room full of powerful men, knowing the answer, and being dismissed before she could finish the sentence. Lily Turner had learned to be quiet in places where grown-ups had money. At 9 years old, she already understood the difference between the way people looked at her father when they needed something fixed, and the way they looked at him when they had to admit he was the one who fixed it. She wore a pink jacket with one sleeve slightly shorter, because Caleb had bought it used from a consignment shop in Newark after her last growth spurt. Her sneakers were clean, but worn thin near the toes. In her backpack were a library book about Amelia Earhart, a half-finished math worksheet, a plastic container with apple slices turning brown at the edges, and an asthma inhaler with a pharmacy sticker Caleb had fought 3 insurance calls to refill. Her mother, Hannah, had died 4 years earlier after a long, brutal illness that began as fatigue and ended in hospital rooms, medical bills, and Caleb sleeping in chairs under fluorescent lights. Since then, Lily had become both child and witness, watching her father stretch every dollar, skip meals without saying it, and smile in a way that never fully reached his eyes. She still believed good people existed, but she had seen enough cruelty to whisper warnings before adults proved her right. The first obstacle came in the form of policy. A corporate attorney named Denise Calder stepped forward with a tablet pressed against her blazer and told Evelyn that allowing Caleb to proceed could expose North Star to catastrophic liability. "He is not on the approved diagnostic authorization list," she said, keeping her voice professional, but urgent. "If he alters anything related to the propulsion system, we may invalidate manufacturer protections, insurance protections, and federal compliance documentation." Warren nodded immediately, grateful for language that made his wounded pride sound like caution. Bradley added, "And if this aircraft is tied to a federal defense transport proposal, chain of custody matters. We cannot let a subcontracted ground worker improvise on a G700 because he heard a noise." Caleb paused, one hand on the inspection panel. He did not argue. He had spent too many years hearing people use complicated words to say simple things. "You do not belong here." Evelyn looked at the attorney, then at the disabled aircraft, then through the glass office wall where her board members were already gathering around a conference phone. Every expensive person in her life was telling her to protect the system. Every instinct in her body told her the system had already failed. "Mr. Turner," Evelyn said, stepping closer. her heels clicking sharply against the concrete. "Tell me exactly what you think you heard." Caleb turned his flashlight off and faced her. Up close, she saw how tired he was. Not lazy tired, not careless tired. The kind of tired that lived deep in the muscles after years of early mornings, hospital bills, school drop-offs, second jobs, and grief carried without applause. "It's not a clean mechanical vibration," he said. "It's too inconsistent. If the engine itself was bad, you'd feel The pattern climbs steady when the system spools. This is more like feedback. Something loose or corroded is lying to the computer, and the computer is protecting the aircraft from a problem that might not actually be there." Warren frowned despite himself. Caleb pointed toward a tight access area beneath the left side housing. "That line right there trembles half a second late. You can't see it unless you stop looking at the screen." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "And you can fix it?" Caleb looked at Lily before answering. "I can find it. Fixing it depends on what it is." That honest answer affected Evelyn more than confidence would have. Everyone else had protected themselves with certainty until certainty collapsed. Caleb protected the truth, even when the truth made him look smaller. Behind them, the experts began forming little islands of resentment. Some whispered about liability. Some checked their phones. Some watched Caleb with the hostile fascination reserved for a man about to embarrass himself publicly. Bradley Voss made a call near the wingtip and spoke just loudly enough for others to hear. "Yes, we've got an unauthorized maintenance worker being entertained by executive decision. No, I'm not joking." Lily heard enough to lower her eyes. Evelyn saw the girl's shoulders fold inward and felt a sudden, unwanted anger. Not at Lily, not even at Caleb, but at the scene itself. She had built a company that flew senators, CEOs, wounded executives, emergency medical teams, and families who needed privacy in the worst moments of their lives. Yet somewhere along the way, the company had learned to treat humble people like disposable equipment. Caleb, meanwhile, removed 2 fasteners and placed them carefully in a magnetic tray. He worked without drama, without proving, without begging. When a junior technician handed him the wrong flashlight, Caleb thanked him anyway. When Bradley muttered, "Unbelievable," Caleb said nothing. That restraint made the room more uncomfortable than anger would have. A man defending his dignity without shouting forced everyone else to hear their own ugliness. As Caleb leaned into the open compartment, the cold metal edge pressed against his forearm and reopened a small cut from the night before. He ignored the sting. He traced the harness path with his flashlight, not touching first, only following. He saw where new parts had been installed, where factory ties were clean, where a bracket had been removed and replaced, where a bundle sat a fraction tighter than it should. He asked for the maintenance history. Warren hesitated, then handed him a tablet with the reluctance of a priest handing scripture to a stranger. Caleb scrolled slowly. Left engine service panel opened 9 days ago in Savannah. Routine inspection. Minor corrosion noted near auxiliary grounding point. Cleaned and cleared. Warren said, "That was already addressed." Caleb looked deeper into the compartment. Maybe on paper. The phrase was not disrespectful, but it hit the room hard. In Caleb's world, paper did not start engines, carry children to school, keep heat on in winter, or bring a wife back from the hospital. Paper mattered, but reality mattered more. He slid one hand in carefully and touched nothing until his flashlight caught a dull gray mark near a hidden connector. His expression changed for less than a second, but Evelyn saw it. That expression pulled Caleb backward into a memory he hated. 3 years earlier, before New Jersey, before North Star, before Lily learned to hide worry behind brave smiles, he had worked at a small aviation service yard outside Knoxville. A rushed supervisor ignored his warning about a damaged grounding strap on an aging medical transport plane, signed off anyway. And when the aircraft later suffered an electrical fault during pre-flight, the company blamed Caleb because he was the lowest paid man on the maintenance sheet. No one died. The plane never left the ground. But the accusation cost him his job, his savings, and nearly his apartment. At the same time, Hannah's medical bills were arriving in envelopes thick enough to make his hands shake. He remembered standing in a courthouse hallway with Lily asleep against his chest while a landlord's attorney discussed eviction like it was a weather report. Since then, Caleb had promised himself he would never again speak up in a room where power had already chosen its scapegoat. Yet here he was, under the wing of a billionaire's jet, risking everything again because the machine had told him the truth, and his daughter was watching what kind of man he would be. Evelyn's phone vibrated in her hand for the 6th time. The board wanted her on the call. Washington wanted a final departure confirmation. A retired Air Force procurement advisor had already texted that the defense meeting could not be moved without reputational consequences. The contract was not just another luxury deal. It involved rapid executive and medical transport infrastructure for defense contractors, emergency response leaders, and veteran family support programs across several states. Evelyn had used patriotic language in the proposal because she knew it mattered in Washington. But now, looking at Caleb and Lily, the words began to feel less like branding and more like a test. Service, duty, family, American workmanship, respect for people who kept the country running when cameras were pointed somewhere else. Her father would have told her to remove the risk, blame a supplier, reschedule the meeting, preserve the company's image. But her father had died alone in a private medical suite with 3 lawyers outside the door and no one holding his hand. Evelyn stared at the American flag hanging near the hangar entrance, its fabric barely moving in the draft, and wondered when she had confused control with strength. Lily coughed softly, then again, sharper. Caleb's head snapped around before anyone else reacted. He pulled himself out of the compartment so fast he nearly struck his shoulder on the panel. "Lil!" he called, already moving. The girl tried to wave him off, embarrassed by the attention, but her breathing had tightened. The damp, cold air, the fuel smell, the long night in the hangar, and the stress had caught up with her. Caleb dropped to one knee, unzipped her backpack, and found the inhaler with the practiced speed of a father who had lived through worse moments in worse places. Slow breath. "Baby," he said, voice low, one hand steady on her back. "In through the mouth. That's it. Look at me." No one laughed now. The hangar watched the same man they had mocked become calm, precise, and deeply tender. Evelyn stood a few feet away, unable to move. She had seen billionaires panic over stock drops, executives curse over delayed flights, generals demand impossible timelines, but she had rarely seen a man pour his entire soul into helping one child take a single breath. Lily recovered. After a minute, cheeks flushed, eyes wet with embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Caleb kissed the top of her head. "Never apologize for needing help." The sentence went through Evelyn like a blade. When Caleb returned to the engine, something in the room had changed. Not enough for kindness, but enough for silence. Even Bradley kept his mouth shut for a while. Evelyn removed her expensive coat and placed it over the back of a service chair near Lily without making a show of it. Lily looked at the coat, then at Evelyn, unsure whether rich people's kindness came with hidden costs. Evelyn said only, "It's cold by the door." Lily whispered, "Thank you, ma'am." Caleb heard the exchange but did not turn around. If he had, Evelyn might have seen gratitude in his face, and gratitude would have frightened her more than anger. He reached back into the compartment with the voltage meter and tested one point, then another. The first reading came clean. The second flickered. The third dropped for half a breath and returned. Warren stepped closer despite himself. "That shouldn't happen." Caleb nodded. "No, sir, it shouldn't." He asked for a mirror probe. A young technician brought one quickly this time. Caleb angled it into the narrow space, and the tiny reflection revealed what the laptops had missed. A grounding braid half hidden behind a bracket, its edge worn bright where vibration had rubbed away protection, leaving corrosion at the contact point, like a secret. The discovery was not yet victory. It was a door opening into danger. If Caleb was right, the fix could be simple, but proving it required exposing the connector, cleaning the contact, securing the strap, and running a validation sequence under everyone's scrutiny. If he was wrong, Evelyn would lose the flight, the contract, and perhaps the last illusion that her instincts were superior to fear. Warren demanded that the manufacturer be called again. Denise warned that every action needed documentation. Bradley insisted the reading might be incidental. The board call transferred to the hangar office speaker. and a male director's voice filled the glass-walled room. "Evelyn, end this now. We are not gambling a federal relationship on some single dad with a toolbox." The words carried into the hangar. Caleb went still. Lily's face hardened with hurt before she looked down at the floor. Evelyn turned slowly toward the office, and for the first time that morning, her anger was clean, not defensive. "His name is Caleb Turner," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "And he has found more in 15 minutes than this room found all night." Then she looked back at Caleb. "Document every step. Give him the tools he asks for. Nobody interrupts him again." Caleb held her gaze for one brief second, not as a servant, not as a charity case, but as a man being trusted in front of his daughter. He nodded once, reached for his wrench, and prepared to open the hidden connection. Caleb exposed the hidden grounding braid with the care of a surgeon and the humility of a man who knew one careless movement could cost him more than money. The compartment was narrow, the metal edges sharp, and the rain outside had grown harder, drumming against the hangar roof while everyone watched from behind the taped safety line. He asked for a clean contact brush, a calibrated torque wrench, dielectric compound, and a replacement fastener rated for the assembly, and this time nobody questioned him. A young technician named Miles handed over each tool with both hands, his earlier smugness replaced by nervous respect. Caleb placed the old, corroded fastener into a clear evidence bag, then cleaned the contact surface until the dull gray gave way to bright metal. Warren Pike leaned so close that his breath fogged the edge of his glasses. "That corrosion was hidden behind the bracket," he murmured, no longer defending his pride. Caleb nodded without looking away. "Because the bracket was tightened against the braid just enough to rub under vibration. Every time the aircraft powered up, the system saw ghosts." Evelyn stood 10 feet behind him, arms folded, face unreadable, but her throat tightened at the word ghosts because she suddenly understood that machines were not the only things in that hangar haunted by old damage. Lily sat wrapped in Evelyn's expensive coat, her small hands locked around the sleeves, watching her father not as a poor man being tested by rich people, but as the bravest person she knew. The validation sequence began at 7:04 a.m., and the hangar turned into a chapel of silence without a single prayer being spoken. Warren called out each step in a clipped voice. Miles monitored the left engine diagnostic panel. Denise recorded the repair trail on her tablet. Bradley Voss stood near the wingtip with his jaw clenched, trapped between wanting Caleb to fail and knowing the evidence had already begun to humiliate him. Caleb stayed beside the access panel, one palm resting lightly on the metal, feeling for vibration the way his father had taught him in a backyard shed in Tennessee. "Auxiliary power stable," Miles said. "Left side sensor bus coming online." The first numbers flickered. Evelyn's phone vibrated again, but she did not look down. Washington could wait. The board could wait. For once, she was not watching a contract, a brand, or a machine. She was watching a father silently ask the world not to teach his daughter that good men were invisible. Then the left engine system spooled into test range. No spike, no false alarm, no cascading fault. The panel that had flashed red all night shifted to amber, then white, then steady green. Miles looked up, stunned. Warren removed his glasses slowly. "Engine validation passed," he said, almost whispering. "Left system stable." For a moment, no one breathed. Then the Gulfstream system settled into a smooth, even rhythm that filled the hangar like a living heartbeat. The first sound after the silence was Lily crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with a small broken gasp that made Caleb turn around before anyone else celebrated. She ran across the polished concrete despite her loose shoelace, and threw herself into his arms so hard he staggered backward. Caleb dropped the wrench onto the mat and caught her against his chest, pressing one hand to the back of her head. "You did it, Daddy," she sobbed into his jacket. "You really did it." Caleb closed his eyes, and for the first time all morning, the strength in his face cracked. "No, baby," he whispered. "We did what your grandpa taught us. We listened." The words reached Evelyn with a force she was not prepared for. The hangar began clapping, slowly at first, then louder, as technicians, auditors, mechanics, and even a few embarrassed consultants joined in. Warren stepped forward and extended his hand. Caleb hesitated, then shook it. "Mr. Turner," Warren said, voice rough with humility, "I owe you an apology." Caleb nodded once. "I appreciate that, sir." Bradley did not move. Evelyn saw him standing there, stiff and pale, and something inside her hardened, not with cruelty, but with justice. She walked to Caleb, stopped in front of him, and said so everyone could hear, "You saved this aircraft, this contract, and this company's honor today." Caleb looked uncomfortable with praise. "I just fixed what was broken, ma'am." Evelyn glanced at Lily, then back to him. "No," she said. "You reminded us what was broken." Bradley tried to recover his authority with the desperate confidence of a man watching status slip through his fingers. "Ms. Harper, with respect, we still need to determine whether this procedure was appropriate before we assign credit. An unlicensed subcontractor cannot simply become the hero of a federal aviation matter because of a lucky guess." The applause died at once. Caleb's face lowered, and Lily's arms tightened around his waist. That old humiliation was back, uglier now because it had survived proof. Evelyn turned toward Bradley so slowly that several people stepped back without realizing it. "Lucky?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but it carried across the entire hangar. 80 experts gave me theories. Caleb Turner gave me the fault, the cause, the repair path, the documentation, and a working aircraft. Bradley's mouth opened, but she cut him off. "You looked at his boots and decided his mind had nothing to offer. You looked at his paycheck and decided his dignity was negotiable. That is not excellence. That is arrogance wearing a badge." Caleb's eyes lifted. Evelyn faced the entire room now, every camera phone lowered, every executive listening from the glass office. From this moment forward, North Star will record Caleb Turner as the technician who identified and corrected the grounding failure on aircraft NSG 700. His name goes into the official report, not as a footnote, not as a courtesy, as the man who got it right. Lily stared at Evelyn as if she had just watched a door open in the sky. Caleb's voice came out quiet. "Why are you doing this?" Evelyn looked at him, and the answer cost her more than any check she had ever written. "Because my father taught me to reward power. Your daughter just reminded me to honor character." Evelyn then did something no one expected from the woman who had built a billion-dollar empire out of polished control. She stepped closer, lowered herself slightly so she was eye level with Lily, and spoke not like a CEO but like a person asking permission to become better. "Lily, I'm sorry you had to hear grown adults treat your father like he was less than he is." Lily wiped her cheeks with the sleeve of Evelyn's coat. "People do that a lot," she said. The simple answer broke the room more deeply than accusation would have. Evelyn nodded, accepting the weight of it. "Then it stops here." She stood and faced Caleb again. "I want you on the Washington flight as part of the technical verification team, paid, documented, and introduced by name. And when we land, I want the people signing that $620 million contract to meet the single father who saved their morning." Caleb shook his head, overwhelmed. "Ma'am, I don't own a suit." Evelyn almost smiled, but her eyes were wet. "Then North Star will buy you one. Not to make you look rich, Mr. Turner. To make sure the room finally sees you with the respect you already earned." Caleb looked down at Lily, and she nodded through tears. "Go, Daddy," she whispered. "Grandpa would say go." If this story of a humble single dad proving everyone wrong has you watching until the end, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring you more emotional stories of sacrifice, hidden strength, and unforgettable twists. Now let's get back to the video. By 9:18 that morning, the Gulf Stream lifted through the low gray clouds above New Jersey with Evelyn Harper in the forward cabin, Caleb Turner seated 2 rows behind her in a borrowed Navy suit, and Lily asleep under a North Star blanket beside the window, after Evelyn personally cleared her to come along. The cabin smelled of leather, warm coffee, and new carpet, and the polished wood tables reflected the pale morning light breaking above the storm. Caleb kept his hands folded in his lap, as if he was afraid to touch anything expensive, but Lily's small hand rested on his sleeve, anchoring him. Evelyn watched them from across the aisle and realized that for years she had flown above the country without truly seeing the people who held it together. Fathers working double shifts, veterans teaching discipline in garages, mothers stretching grocery money, mechanics listening to machines in the cold while executives slept in quiet mansions. When they landed in Washington, D.C., Evelyn did not hide Caleb behind her advisors. She introduced him first, in a conference room overlooking the Potomac in front of defense officials, board members, and senior aviation leaders. She said, "This is Caleb Turner. North Star arrived today because he refused to let arrogance be louder than truth." Caleb lowered his eyes, humbled, but Lily stood taller beside him, and that alone made every insult from the hangar lose its power. The contract was signed at 12:46 p.m., but Evelyn no longer saw the $620 million as the greatest victory of the day. The next morning, she called an emergency leadership meeting at North Star headquarters in Manhattan, not in the cold glass boardroom where people use numbers to hide from responsibility, but inside the maintenance training bay where the floor smelled of rubber mats, machine oil, and honest work. Caleb stood beside her in his old boots again, because he had insisted on returning the suit before the end of the day. Evelyn announced the creation of the Turner Veterans Technical Fellowship, a funded program for single parents, veterans, low-income mechanics, and self-taught technicians who had the skill but lacked access to the rooms where decisions were made. The first-year budget was set at $18 million, with full certification support, child-care stipends, health coverage assistance, paid apprenticeships, and guaranteed interviews across North Star facilities in New Jersey, Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee. Then she offered Caleb a permanent position as Senior Practical Diagnostics Specialist, with a salary of $185,000 a year, full medical coverage for Lily, and an education fund in Lily's name. Caleb did not cry when the offer was read. He only looked at Evelyn and said, "I'll accept the job, ma'am, but not charity." Evelyn nodded. "That's why it comes with responsibility. Help me build a company worthy of the people it overlooked." 6 months later, the hangar no longer felt like a place where poor people were expected to stay invisible. A large American flag hung above the training bay, not as decoration for wealthy visitors, but as a daily reminder that dignity, duty, and honest work were not reserved for people with polished titles. Caleb led a mixed team of former Marines, single mothers, retired Air Force technicians, young apprentices from community colleges, and older mechanics who had been told they were too ordinary to matter. Lily came after school twice a week, doing homework at a metal desk near the office, her inhaler beside a stack of library books about aircraft design. Evelyn sometimes sat with her, awkward at first, then easier, learning how to talk without commanding, how to listen without calculating, how to be present without turning the moment into a transaction. She also changed. She stopped eating dinner alone in the executive suite every night. She visited Caleb and Lily in Tennessee for Thanksgiving, not as a billionaire guest performing kindness, but as a woman slowly remembering that family could be chosen through loyalty, patience, and love. At Samuel Turner's old workshop, Caleb showed her the faded Marine photograph of his father, and Evelyn stood silently before it for a long time before whispering, "He raised a good man." Caleb answered, "He raised me to fix what I can. You're doing the same now." 2 years later, North Star opened the Samuel Turner Center for American Technical Excellence in Nashville, a red brick training facility with wide windows, clean workstations, a veterans wall, childcare rooms, and a scholarship board where Lily's name appeared as the first youth ambassador. Evelyn gave the opening speech without notes. She did not talk first about revenue, investors, aircraft, or contracts. She talked about a rainy morning in New Jersey when 80 experts quit. One single father listened, and a little girl reminded an entire company what respect should look like. Caleb stood in the front row with Lily beside him, her hair neatly braided, her eyes shining as apprentices in work jackets applauded behind them. Evelyn looked over the room and finally understood that wealth had never been the same as worth. The company was stronger. The fellowship had already placed 214 people into stable aviation careers, and Caleb no longer carried himself like a man waiting to be dismissed. He carried himself like a father whose daughter had seen him stand tall. Have you ever helped someone at their lowest moment and discovered that your kindness changed their life forever? Drop a little heart in the comments if you believe love, kindness, and quiet strength are worth more than money, status, or any fortune. Subscribe for more emotional stories about second chances, hidden truth, and the moment a humble heart changes everything. Comment, "Love has no price tag," if you believe real kindness can change someone's life when they need it most.